Thank you for your patience. Okay, Chair, when you're ready, we're now live on YouTube. Would you like to start the meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. Good morning and welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual planning committee meeting on the 1st of September 2021. I am your chair, Councillor Eileen Wragg. Based on the decision of our extraordinary meeting of council on 26th of July, I would like to remind both members and public attending or watching that this council has delegated much of its decision-taking power to our senior officers. This is for a short period of time only, to the 17th of January 2022, and is due to concerns relating to COVID risk. Consequently, this meeting is being held remotely and on a consultative basis only. We will continue to adhere as closely as possible to the procedural rules detailed in our Constitution. However, where this meeting would have normally decided a matter, it will now make recommendation to a senior officer. The officer will then take that recommendation into account when making their decision. The meeting can be viewed live online and will be recorded. Please bear this in mind throughout the meeting. Sorry. Therefore, may I remind colleagues to be careful with their language and that the code of conduct applies throughout our meeting. We reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant disrupting the meeting by whatever means. As this meeting is dependent on internet connection and the power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. If we are not able to reconnect after 15 minutes, this meeting will be adjourned and reconvened at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for further details. Could colleagues please ensure your microphone is muted when you are not speaking? This will help avoid any disturbance from background noise. Could you also please keep your points short and not interrupt when someone else is speaking? Should you wish to comment, please raise your electronic hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any members of the public can view the agenda by visiting our website at www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call of committee members here present. Can you please now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you're present, please mute your microphone again. Wendy, can you read out the list, please?
Thank you. So, Chair, we'll start with you, Councillor Wragg.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor De Sarum.
Present. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzard.
Present, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Key.
Present, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Present.
Councillor Pook.
Present.
Councillor Pratt.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Present.
Thank you. I confirm we're correct today.
Thank you. Right, agenda item 1, the running order for today's meeting and speakers list can be viewed under agenda item 1 on pages 4 to 5. Agenda item 2, minutes of the consultative meeting held on 4th of August, pages 6 to 10. If anyone has a comment on these minutes, please raise your electronic hand. If there are no raised hands, I will take this as an indication that you are happy that the minutes are noted or confirmed, whichever. Right. There are no electronic hands raised. So those minutes are noted. Right. Apologies for absence. Wendy?
Yes, we have 4 apologies this morning. Councillor Davey, Councillor Howe, Councillor Wibley, Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Wendy. Agenda
So,
item. Oh,
Chair,
wait. Yeah.
could I just ask, was that Chris Wright or Tom Wright? Because Chris Wright also gave his apologies.
Apologies, it was Councillor Chris Wright.
Chris Wright.
Yeah, Tom Wright's
Yeah.
no longer on the
Oh,
on the
okay.
committee.
Is he not on this committee? And
Councillor Tom Wright isn't, no, because he's chair of scrutiny now.
of course he is.
No,
Yes.
I've replaced him.
Yes. Of course you did. Sorry.
That's right, I let you off.
forgotten that. Okay. Right. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Wendy, can you do the roll call, please?
Yes, certainly, Chair. So members, when I call your name, please can you indicate which item number, what type of interest you're declaring, and why you're declaring that interest. So Chair, if I could start with you.
Yes. I only had email from one of the ward members for 210781 Major Full. That's the school at Sidmouth, but that was all.
An email from a member, was that, sorry?
Yeah, one of the ward members.
Thank you.
I think it was a ward member, but it was one of the Sidmouth members anyway.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain. Councillor Chamberlain?
Sorry, no
Come back.
declarations of interest.
Thank
Sorry.
you. That's all right. Councillor Bloxham?
None, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
I'm the ward member for 21/1584 and also for 20/2819. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor De Sarum?
No declarations at all today, Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzard?
None, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Key?
Yes, Wendy, ward member 21/1584 and 20/2819.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence?
None today, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Pook?
None today, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt?
Yes, item 12, 21/1313, 3 Orchard Close. I was a member of the working group that produced the Ottery St Mary and West Hill neighbourhood plan, and I'm the ward member for Ottery St Mary.
Okay, so that's a personal interest. Is that
A
Councillor
personal
Pratt?
interest. Yes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Skinner?
Yes, I have a personal interest on 21/0482, which is Greendale Farm Shop. I've been best friends with the Carters for many, many years. I will not be involving myself in the debate or in any voting, and would subsequently like to be asked to leave the meeting and put into the sin bin or the naughty boys room or whatever you call it when that application comes up, please.
Thank you. Yes, I'll put you in the virtual lobby.
The virtual lobby. That was the words I was looking for, Wendy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward?
None, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. That's the end of the declarations. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Wendy. Item 5, matters of urgency. There are no matters of urgency to discuss. Item 6, confidential exempt items. There are none. Item 7, appeal status report 2020 to 2021, pages 11 to 22. Update from Mr. Freeman, Service Lead Planning, Strategy and Development Manager on the planning appeals. Over to you, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Chair. So hopefully you can see in the agenda, item 7, you've got on the first page a list of the appeals lodged over the last month. And then starting on page 12 is a list of the appeals decided over the last month. A bit of a mixed bag of decisions. Couple I'll just pick up on. The first one, really, April Rise, Crewkern Road, Axminster, is an interesting one where we had previously granted consent for the conversion of a garage to a holiday let accommodation. This is at Raymond's Hill. And the appellants applied to remove that holiday restriction. Members will be aware that generally as a council we've taken the view of a slightly more relaxed approach, shall we say, to holiday accommodation in countryside locations due to the economic benefits and the different trip patterns that those kind of uses generate in terms of vehicular movements. However, in this particular case, the inspector actually couldn't see any real difference between it being used as holiday let accommodation and being used for general residential purposes. And so the inspector has allowed that property to move from being a holiday let to permanent residence, which is a little bit concerning in terms of that being different with our approach. I don't think one appeal decision a new approach necessarily makes, but I think it's something to be mindful of in terms of considering these types of applications and their sustainability, particularly in terms of access to services and facilities, public transport, etc., because it may indicate a move from the inspectorate to perhaps not seeing that distinction so much between holiday accommodation and permanent residences. So just worth bearing that one in mind. In terms of the other decisions, there's Home Farm Clisthoniton, which has also been allowed. I think this is a slightly unusual one for business space close to the airport and close to residences in terms of noise, where I think the inspector's given greater weight to the historic use of the premises, the noise that generated and the number of people that were on the site than perhaps we did, which is an interesting one. I think perhaps partly because the historic use didn't benefit from a specific planning permission. It had perhaps become lawful over time, so it was quite difficult to determine the nature of that use and its extent. But the inspector seems to have been satisfied where we were not. The other one to note is Honiton Cattle Market. That was a large public inquiry that took place over a week. So a good decision there, I think, which perhaps saves us this month in terms of the decisions, and that one's been dismissed, and we've managed to retain our position in terms of the use of that site for employment purposes. And hopefully we can see an employment use return to that site as a result in the near future. The last one is the Laurels at Limston. I think this is another example of a house extension where the inspectorate just really haven't been very supportive of us on house extensions, as members will be aware, taking perhaps a more relaxed approach, particularly to issues of design and amenity. And this is perhaps another sign of that slightly worrying trend in terms of that. So not the best of months in terms of performance with 3 appeals allowed, but I think our record for the year as a whole is still very good. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ed. Right, now I'm jumping in and out of Zoom and back to my script. Right, then we go to agenda item 11, application 21-1279 full. It's a minor application, land to the front of 20 Highfield, Honiton, and pages 67 to 73. And I'd like to welcome to the meeting Nicola Parkins, Mitch Cooper, and Councillor Bonetta. Your first appearance at a planning meeting, Councillor Bonetta. So, Mr. Freeman, could you present your report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen so you can see the plans.
Mm.
Hopefully you can all see my screen now.
Yeah.
Good. Um, Right, so this application relates to land at the front of 20 Highfield in Honiton. As you can see from the plan, this site lies at the end of the cul-de-sac, tucked behind a row of garages and in front of a run of bungalows that look onto this area. It's currently a sort of open grassed area that seems to form an additional garden area to the host property at number 20. Who also own this garage here and this space on the end, which is proposed to be utilised as parking for the proposed property. So you can see the proposal is to build a modest two-bedroom single-storey dwelling on the site, like so, with this utilising this parking area at the front, retaining the garage for the existing property. And you can see the plans here, which shows you the floor plan, typical bungalow arrangements, with a garden area, as you can see, sort of spread around these two sides of the property. If I turn to the aerial photograph, you can see how this links into the wider area and this footpath that links through from the road behind through here, making this site actually quite prominent in terms of public footpath routes through this area. And from the photographs, you can see it was a little bit overgrown at this time, but you can see some sort of domestic paraphernalia that's come into the area, but otherwise it's quite open plan and open to views from the wider area. So this view is just looking in across the garages at the front. This is the space where this van is parked, which would be car parking for the property, and the site is tucked round the back. And then you can see views across that area there. So as I say, although the site is overlooked by a number of dwellings, the proposal is considered to be sufficiently distanced from them to prevent it from being overly intrusive or overbearing due to any lack of privacy. As you can see, there's a reasonable gap, quite large front gardens to these adjacent properties, and being single story, its bulk and scale is quite minimal, and it's set in slightly from the boundary, as it also a reasonable distance to these properties to the south as well. There's some concerns have been expressed regarding the parking arrangements by residents in the area, but we feel that the provision of the one parking space for the proposed property and the retention of the existing garage for number 20 is sufficient, given the close proximity to the services and facilities that are available within the town. The site is obviously within the heart of the town of Honiton, which has a full range of services and facilities available and good public transport to the wider area. The main concern that officers have relating to this development is its impact on the character and appearance of the area. As I said, this is an open grassed area of some amenity value to the wider area, and this footpath link through here kind of illustrates its prominence in the street scene. This arrangement, we feel, is out of keeping with the character of that area and harmful to its visual amenity, and so the recommendation is refusal on that basis. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I think you're muted.
Right. I'm juggling between screens here. Welcome to the meeting, Nicola Parkins. Nicola Parkins is objecting to the application. You have 3 minutes to present your case. Nicola Parkins?
Let me just check the list a moment. Yes, Nicola Parkins.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Sorry. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I'm the owner of number 13 Highfield, which is quite close to the proposed development. I bought it last year to rent out to an elderly friend of mine. My main concern is about the potential instability of the site and therefore the potential impact of the disturbance of this ground on neighbouring properties. What the introduction that you just heard didn't highlight is that between Highfield and the adjacent road behind Miller's Way, there's a significant height difference, and I've highlighted this in my submission. It really is like a cliff, and the difference in height, Highfield being much higher than Miller's Way, there's a high retaining wall, got a vertical retaining wall between the two roads. And I've submitted some photos showing my concerns that in the past there has certainly been some movement of the land between these two levels, as evidenced in the steps which go from Highfield very close to the proposed development site down to the lower level of Miller's Way, and also in the garage wall. And there was, in one of the photos you just saw, you can see the large crack in the garage wall there. So there definitely has been movement there in the past. And my concern is that if the disturbance of this site so close, the retaining wall is literally at the end of the garage there. You can see the drop in level, and you can literally see above, right across the roofs of the buildings at the lower level. So my concern is there's been past movement here, and I believe that just building on this site, disturbing the land, would create a significant risk of new movement in the area that could create subsidence in these adjacent properties. The applicant has addressed these points in his response, but I think he doesn't really mention the retaining wall. I don't know how he knows that there's been no subsidence at number 26, and how can he know that the steps and the paths and the garages won't be affected by the proposed development. So we're in a different era of climate. We know we have these very long wet spells, like May this year when it rained almost every day in this area, heavy rain. I think that needs to be taken into account as well. This may not be, strictly speaking, a planning concern, but I do wonder what the position of the council would be if the development went ahead and then there were to be subsidence found in the neighbouring properties. So I do hope that members will keep this in mind when they make their decision.
Thank you. Right, next we have the agent, Mitch Cooper. Mr. Cooper, you have 3 minutes.
Good morning, all.
Morning.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this meeting. And note the officer's recommendation, and obviously I disagree with this. Please note there's no principal objection to a home to be built in the built-up area boundary. And careful consideration was given to this design following a planning pre-app with East Devon District Council. We positioned it, we put the fence in, and we designed it based on previous comments from the previous pre-app. The proposal would not impact on the immediate of the neighbours, which you've thankfully said anyway. And the design, the materials, the scale, the size, everything is literally based on one of the bungalows. The only difference I can see is it's on its own and not a semi-detached bungalow. I think it would actually finish the cul-de-sac at the top quite nicely. And anyone walking by, I think they'd rather walk by a nice garden and a nice home rather than a piece of wasteland which is being left to overgrow with a tatty old trampoline chucked on it. Note Councillor Twist's support. Again, he's very pro-development. And then I go to other comments raised.
Sorry, we can't hear you very well,
Oh,
Mr.
sorry.
Cooper. You're breaking up.
It may be my internet.
Could you repeat that last sentence again?
Just thanking Phil Twist, Councillor Twist, for his comments
All right.
and in support. And I'll go on to a neighbour comment. Can you all hear me now? Is that okay?
Yes, that's better.
Very pleased to note Highways have made no objection for the parking. As previously said, very sustainable location. The number 20 retains its garage and parking space in front, and the new dwelling would actually have 2 spaces, room for 2 cars. Refuse collection, this would not be affected at all and would be just as per any home in the area. The electric substation has no impact on the development. I just thought I'd raise that. Comment of noise was raised. All building sites are noisy. You know, to build a house, you have to make some noise, but I would hope a planning condition would limit the hours of work and limited impact on the neighbours. You know, no one wants to upset any neighbours when building a new home. Pollution, I have no comment on that. That's a slightly irrelevant comment. With regards to subsidence, the steps are very, very old. They've been there a very long time, and any brick-built structure will deteriorate over time. I don't believe it's really subsidence related. But foundations for this would be very, very carefully looked at. They'd be engineer designed. The site-specific soil tests, everything to relating to how that building will sit on the site would be covered. And obviously the height difference between Highfield and Way would be taken into account. We don't encroach on any of the neighbours. I think the design matches very well with the neighbours, and all the materials are designed to match. And it would seem we're in a very similar situation to the application at number 6, The Chase, where East Devon actually raised some very valid comments. And I would say that this application is actually much better designed and positioned, and that one was one at appeal. I don't really think there's a lot more to say about the design. It speaks for itself. And I thank you again for your time, and I hope the members can support the application. I'm here if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, now, Councillor Bonetta, is he in, please?
I'm not sure. There's I can't scroll down the my list because I'm on the speaker view, but there is a Strata iPad. I'm not sure if that's him. But I don't think he is, because he hasn't acknowledged when you called his name. So I'm assuming he hasn't entered the meeting.
Okay.
Wendy, just for clarification, Chair, is the Strata iPad looks like it's Councillor Peter Faithful.
Oh, lovely.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, now I'll take questions to the applicant. Are there any questions? Just put your hand up. If Councillor Key, I see your hands up, but do you have a question? No.
No.
There are nobody else has their hand up for a question. So over to you, Councillor Key. You're on mute.
Thank you, Chair. I actually went and had a look at this site because you know, I felt that there was a bit of controversy over it. I feel very, very much against this site being developed. It's okay, yes, I mean, it's not a tidy site as such, but it's nice, a piece of nice open land there. When I drove up the Highfield Road there, that was fine, not a problem. While I was there, a delivery van came up and blocked the entrance to where the garages are. And unfortunately, when I finished, yes, that blue van that's there now is not always there. Sometimes you find it actually parked in different parts of the town. Now, I don't know quite whether that's to, you know, alleviate sort of any parking facilities or not. I don't know. But I have seen that vehicle parked in different parts of the town at different times of the day. Whether it's working, I'm not quite sure, because I did find it one day there at a considerable time. But when this vehicle blocked that entrance there, I had to reverse all the way down to Highfield, the Highfield Road down to the bottom, because there was cars parked there. And it is very narrow up through there when you actually get cars parked there. I totally agree with the recommendation of the officer, and therefore I'm more than happy to put forward the recommendation of refusal.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that recommendation, please? No seconder?
Yes, Chair, I'll second that. Councillor Chamberlain.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Chamberlain. Would you like to speak on it?
I think all the points that I would speak about have been mentioned in the report before. So I don't think I have anything further to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chair. And obviously, with my hand being up and not seconded, it's quite obvious which way I'm going to go with this. I also know the site. I know the site reasonably well. I don't say as I know it ever so well, but having said that, you've only got to visit somewhere to have a look at what's going on. This is in a built-up area. I'm struggling to understand why this isn't going forward in the way of a two-storey, two-bed dwelling. It's providing affordable dwelling for whomever. And I personally, in fact, when you read the report, the executive summary, and I'm listening to what's all been said before, but when you read the report, it's almost like as if the script writer is sort of saying, well, yes or no. And I think it comes out as a sort of a balanced view. I think if there was any issue I would have to pick up on, it would be the parking issue. There seems to be a relationship here people talking about parking, but I think that can be quite easily overcome. And so I'm not going to be supporting the recommendation that's gone forward. I know you have to vote on that, but hopefully if it comes back and I do get a seconder, I shall be making a recommendation. I can't do that now, I understand that, but I shall be making a recommendation, if it falls, a recommendation, if you don't mind, Chair, of approval.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pook.
Okay, thank you. I, like Councillor Skinner, find it a bit difficult to understand why this should be refused. The main reason for refusal seems to be the sort of the look at the exact wording, the detrimental act on the amenity, but and the fact that it's open. But had that been, that site could quite easily be fenced in with a 1.8 metre fence, and then it wouldn't be open, and we wouldn't be able to do anything about it anyway. And so going back to the other points, it provides an appropriate small dwelling, which will be affordable by nature. There is parking provided. It's not impinging on public space parking because it's on the site. So I have difficulty finding any real reasons for refusing it, because it's a private piece of land, and say the owner could do what he wants to do and with it, and that would have the sort of same negative impacts on the amenity that, or possibly more negative impacts on the sort of visual amenity than a house with a low fence or a low hedge. So if it does come up for the second amendment, I'll be supporting the amendment to approve.
Thank you. Councillor Desarum.
Thank you, Chair. As previous commentators have said, it is very much a useful bungalow for the person who is going to have it. And I think I particularly note the Councillor Twist's comments that the proposal seeks to build a small infill dwelling that will sit well on the available plot, with no obvious impact. So having seen the pictures, having listened to the debate, like those councillors before me, Councillors Pook and Skinner, I too would be tempted to support it were it to come back for further discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think if the proposal for the property is approved, the building will in fact improve the site, and again, it's a much needed accommodation, and I will, if it comes to it, support the application for the property to be approved.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Yeah, well, I too would recommend this one for approval. I mean, the committee have only got to cast their mind back to one that was the 6th The Chase in Honiton, a site behind the Churchill development that's there. That was written up for a delegated refusal. It went to appeal, and East Devon lost that appeal for a bungalow on a small site very similar to this one. So I too would support it to save East Devon time and money going to appeal again.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Chair. Just commenting on the report that it actually does say that it wouldn't result in detrimental harm to the immunity of the neighbours. So that's a good point in favour of it. The issue is, according to the report, that it's at odds with the surrounding pattern of the other buildings. So, but the issue seems to me, it's unfortunate that it's not a community piece of land. I think that would be the better outcome, but it's not. We have to accept that it's owned, I think, by the people across the road, and it looks a bit of a mess. So if it can't be community land, then I think a tidy bungalow for affordable or more affordable housing would be actually an improvement to what's there already. So on balance, I think it's probably best to allow the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Key, you want to come back?
Yes, Chairman. It seems as though I'm on a bit of a losing wicket here, so I'm more than happy to actually withdraw my proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain, you seconded. Are you happy to withdraw, or would you like to propose? Councillor Chamberlain? Councillor Chamberlain there?
Yes, she is. She is there, but she's muted at the moment.
Sorry, my internet's going in and out today. I'm really sorry.
We're all having problems, I think.
I am here, but it's intermittently. I can hear bits and not others, and then it's okay. So I'm sorry I've missed that last couple of minutes.
Okay, well, Councillor Key has withdrawn his proposal. I don't know whether you wanted to become the proposer and whether you could get a seconder, or whether you would agree to withdraw it.
I'll agree to withdraw it and listen to other people what they have to say, but it's a difficult site. I can see pros for both ways. I just, with the outlook of the picture in front of me that I'm looking at,
yeah.
And the bungalows facing that aspect, I'm just concerned. What if a 6-foot fence went up there? I think it would be, it would change the whole area. If a house goes in there, I think it would be overdevelopment of the site. But I am happy to listen to what people have to say going forward.
Thank you. So that has fallen. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chair. And obviously I'd like to make a recommendation for approval, and I'll do that. And I think it's quite obvious where we are, but I think what I want to be guarded on and just give consideration to for Officer Mr. Freeman, that if it does go forward, does Mr. Freeman or the planning team have at this point any consideration regarding sorry, what do you call the God, my memory.
Conditions.
Thank you, Councillor Chamberlain. Thank you very much. Any conditions going forward that we may need to just be mindful of, because I think that's really important. So yes, I am making a recommendation for approval, but I just want to hear from. Obviously, I'd like to see if that gets seconded, and if it does, if we could hear from Mr. Freeman, Chair, if that was possible, please, just to hear of any conditions that he may see considered. Thank you.
First of all, is there a seconder?
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you. That's Councillor Brown, is it? I haven't got you on my
That's
screen.
right, yes.
Yeah, okay. Proposed and seconded. Now, Mr. Freeman, can you answer Councillor Skinner's question, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, I think if members are minded to approve some of the conditions that immediately come to mind, obviously the usual ones about the materials to be used in the construction of the bungalow, the landscaping, particularly this boundary. I think we'd want to retain a well-landscaped edge to that boundary with the footpath rather than the fence that I think's been mentioned and discussed. Obviously, retention of the parking arrangements, and I think given how tight the plot is, which is part of the fundamental concern we have as officers, I think if it was to go ahead, we'd need to remove permitted development rights, because I don't think there's really much scope to extend the property or go up in terms of dormer windows and things that could overlook neighbouring properties because of its tightness. So I think those are the things that immediately come to mind that we'd want to condition. And I think that issue about overdevelopment sort of highlights the concerns in terms of developing spaces like this is what that does to the character of an area if we take away all of these little green spaces and informal open areas, and fundamentally that's the concern. But I think hopefully that gives members a flavour of the conditions that we would impose, but I would recommend that those be delegated to officers to finalise.
Okay, you happy with that, proposer?
Well, I think just on that, Chair, if you don't mind, I'm quite happy with the delegated with the officers, but I've always been an advocator that what's really important is the people on the ground. So I would like to think that it was delegated with you as chair, if you don't mind, and or vice chair, or however you want to do that, but also the ward members. I think it's really important the ward members have a say on how things are going to come out into their areas. So if I could add into that delegation, fine. I'm quite happy with the conditions, in agreement with the chair and ward member, or members, whatever the case is. Members, I think, in this case, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, I agree with that.
You agree that? Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Councillor Steve Gazzard, you something to add?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting application in this, but I'm just wondering whether there can be any conditions put on, as the objector raised a very good issue regarding the boundary wall that's got a big crack and subsidence. Is there any condition that we could put on regarding that? Because you know, if something does happen, as the objector says, I mean, how would that affect the East Devon District Council of giving planning permission if it's been highlighted that there could be subsidence there? I just wondered whether there could be a condition put about that. Thank you.
I don't know whether that would be a civil matter. Perhaps Mr. Freeman could advise, or even Anita Williams.
Well, thank you, Chair. Shall I go first, and then Anita can add anything? I mean, I would say I don't think we've seen any evidence really to suggest that this is likely to lead to a subsidence issue. I hear what's been said about, you know, the existing garages and the steps, but I think, as has been said, they are very old, and there could be a number of reasons why they're experiencing cracking. The other thing to say is, my understanding is, and Anita may be able to confirm this or not, is that issues like this, where it's subsidence between two private properties, is largely a private matter between the owners of those properties, and not really something to influence a planning decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything to add, Anita?
No, I'd agree with that, and obviously building control would be involved in any setting up of foundations and things like that. Chair, all I would say is, and of course we've started with one against approval for my first one without Shirley here, so I'm slightly working my way through this. I think the proposer and seconder do need to give some reasons for going against the officer's recommendation. So if we could perhaps have those, that would be helpful.
Councillor Skinner?
Sorry, I was trying to mute off here, so a bit of a challenge. Well, I think trying to give us reasons to do this. I love this when the officers do this on a the reasons put forward. Then, I mean, I see no reason. If you read the report, particularly the executive summary, it seems a very balanced view, and in principle there doesn't seem to be an objection in principle to the built-up area boundary. So that's one. Secondly, although it says it sits in odds, I don't consider that does sit in odds with the surrounding pattern of development. It's going to be a bungalow which has become a more affordable dwelling. I think that's very much in a built-up area boundary. The highways issues, there doesn't seem to be any. So I don't see that the points for refusal don't really stand up, and I think that's likely to be part of the reason why. I don't know if Councillor, sorry, no, it wasn't Councillor Pook. Was who seconded it?
Councillor Brown.
No, I second it.
Yeah, whether Councillor Brown has anything to add to that.
It complies with what we're basically saying. It's not contrary to Strategy 6, so it complies with Strategy 6 in the East Devon local plan, and it is within the built-up area boundary. So I mean that's good enough reasons for it to be approved, I think.
Is that all right with you, Anita?
I think the question probably is for Ed. Is that sufficient for you, Ed, to take forward?
I think it is. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, I think it's a subjective judgment about the impact on the character and appearance of the area. So if members want to come to a contrary view, I think we can encapsulate that in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, over to Anita then to sum up, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So the decision is to recommend approval of the recommendation, approval of the application in opposition to the officer's requirement or the officer's recommendation. So members, when your name is called, please would you indicate whether you support the motion to recommend approval for the following reasons, and the reasons being those that were just given with regard to Strategy 6 and the built-up area boundary details. And it would be with a recommendation to delegate conditions to officers in consultation with the chair and the ward members. Okay, Wendy, is that okay?
Lovely, thank you. So I'll start with Councillor Bloxham.
Support approval.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Support.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor De Saram.
Support motion to recommend approval.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzard. Councillor Gazzard.
Sorry, Wendy, it was on mute. Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Key.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Support.
Thank you. Councillor Pook.
Support.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Support approval.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
For approval.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Support approval.
Thank you. Councillor Ragg.
Abstain.
Thank you. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in support, no against, and 1, 2, 3, 4 abstentions. So the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Wendy. Right, move to agenda item 13, application 210482, full application, Greendale Farm Shop, Sidmouth Road, Farringdon, pages 84 to 66, and I believe Councillor Skinner is going into the virtual waiting room.
Yep, I'll just put, I'll find him on my list. Bear with me a moment. He's in the waiting room. Thank you, Chair. He's in the waiting room now.
Thank you. Right, now, like to welcome to the meeting Gemma Green, who's a supporter, Sam Kirkness, the agent, and Councillor Benningham. Welcome to the meeting. Gemma Green, you have 3 minutes to present your case. Oh, no, wait a minute. I'm going ahead of myself. Ed Freeman to present his report first. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this application relates to Greendale Farm Shop on the A3052. Members are probably familiar with the site, but you can see this is the access here from the A3052. This is the main farm shop and the series of poultry units that lie to the south of that. This application relates to land on which the existing poultry unit down here stands, which is the one nearest to Greendale House itself. Permission has previously been granted for the change of use of the existing building to a children's day nursery. This was done under a prior approval process under some of the new permitted development rights that the government have introduced to enable the reuse of rural buildings. So under that application, we couldn't consider the principle of the appropriateness of having a day nursery in this location, simply a number of matters of detail. So in effect, the applicants have a fallback position, is how it's known in planning terms, whereby they have a consent to convert the existing building into a children's day nursery. They're now proposing to replace the existing building with one of the same dimensions, and again for use as a day nursery. The result is some minor changes to a number of openings within the building compared to the existing structure, and some minor design changes are proposed. But these make no material difference in planning terms to the impact of the building itself on the location or the wider countryside. There's a proposed walkway and parking area would also be added, which has some impact in terms of the urban appearance of the area immediately adjacent to the farm shop and the building. However, given the wider context of the farm shop and its environs, it's not considered that this would be sufficiently harmful to justify refusal. Although obviously the principle of this location for a day nursery is not something that would usually be supported by our policies, we do, case law does say that we do need to have regard to the fallback position. And so I would advise that objecting to this development based on the use of the building would be difficult to sustain on appeal, given the fallback position of the consent under the prior approval process for the use of the building for those purposes. As I say, the replacement building is the same dimensions as the existing building with very few alterations to what's already there. And so from an officer's perspective, we don't think that there are sound reasons to object to this development based on that fallback position. And so the recommendation is to approve, subject to the conditions detailed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Right. Gemma Green, now you have 3 minutes to speak. Welcome to the meeting.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, yes, we can.
Hello. Yeah, so I'm Gemma Green. I am the owner of the nursery that is approached Greendale. My reason for this is I've worked in childcare for over 20 years, and the way things are going now, both parents are working. A lot of our children come to us quite often 7:45 until 6 for very long days. And how things are at the moment, a lot of nurseries, commercial buildings, in industrial sites, they're big 200-300 place nurseries, and the children are in boxes all day, every day. And my vision is to create small and homely nurseries in rural areas on farms. This enables our children to be able to come to nursery, have it small and homely, but equally they're able to go out and explore. So Greendale's the perfect site. The children can walk down to the lake, they can look at the fish, they can go and see the animals. It doesn't cause an impact. It's only a very small number of children. Our waiting lists are so long. There's such a need for childcare, but for me, it's more about having a vision to provide somewhere for children that is nice, because our children, they don't want to come to us. They don't want to be in a nursery, but they have to, because now both parents work. So to be able to create an environment where they can come to nursery, enjoy it, but also have the ability, kind of, you know, the ability to go off and be able to walk around the lakes. And I think just moving forward, we need to think about the mental well-being of our children. And I believe that being in massive nurseries in commercial, industrial sites is just not the way forward. Yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Next agent, Sam Kirkness, you have 3 minutes. Welcome to the meeting.
Very much. I think most of it's been summed up by Mr. Freeman and his report, so I won't repeat any of that. Just really to mention that we've worked very closely with officers to try and create a design that does meet the policy position. We did, in fact, hope to build a slightly larger structure for Gemma and the nursery, thinking that that was actually a better and more practical design. So we've actually reverted back to this smaller structure through our consultation with officers on this one, and working with the council to provide a building which we think provides no visual impact in comparison to what's already in place, and which meets the policy position. So there's been a lot of work behind the scenes in arriving at this latest proposal, which is a much smaller structure than initially proposed. But we certainly support the recommendations. We acknowledge the fallback position, and in terms of what this could offer for the local community, well, it's a great complement to the farm shop. We're really looking forward to having a nursery in this location. It will use the existing farm shop access, which already has clearly a quite high volume of traffic, so we don't anticipate any impact there, as has been reinforced by the lack of objection from Devon County Council Highways. And we note that the Devon County Council Early Years and Childcare department also actively support the application on the basis of the anticipated demand for nursery space in this location, which Jem has already touched upon. So all in all, we think it's a great location for this, and we're very happy with the proposed conditions that have been put forward by officers on the application, and look forward to hopefully moving this forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkness. Now we have the ward member. Welcome to the meeting, Councillor Benningham. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'll save you quite a few of those if I can. Firstly, I fully support this application. Mr. Freeman's given a great synopsis of why we should be supporting this. Just to refresh on that, we've already got permitted development rights for the nursery to function on that site. So we also know that the application occupies the same footprint, and Mr. Freeman told us very little visual significant change, changes to the visual impression when you're walking around in that location. It's there, but very little. You also heard what the owner said. Now, I think it's important that we avoid going down the line of, a dog in a manger treatment. We want this nursery to function properly, don't we, for a number of years. And so we want to help the owners and the applicant make this fit for purpose. Surely that is in our interest to do so. I'd also say, if you were to refuse this application, how would that look? How would that make this council look? You heard the agent say, through negotiation, they've arrived at this application. So how would it look for us to turn this application down after the applicant's done their best to make this fit for purpose and fit in within the setting? So, Chairman, I'm going to leave it at that, because I don't see you need any more persuading than what you've heard, that this is an appropriate application that we should support. And I recommend your committee to do so. Thank you for your time, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ingham. Right, Councillor De Sarum.
Chair, sorry, I've just got...
I think we've got Councillor Young to come.
Yes, I've got a statement from Councillor Young.
Oh, yes, I see that. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, it's on the other side of the page. Right.
Okay.
Yep. Carry on.
So, thank you. So, Councillor Young's statement reads as follows. Please accept my apologies today, but I'm unable to attend. There is, I'm afraid, a long history to this application. It goes back to a planning application by the previous owner of the field to locate several chicken sledges. They are chicken houses constructed of tubular steel cross-membered throughout the interior, designed to be moved around by the field by a tractor. The present owners, when they purchased the farm shop, then located them on a concrete base, and for the last 5 years have not been used. A prior approval development was agreed at this location, 20/1918/PDS, for the proposed change of use of agricultural building nursery last year. The principle of permitting a change of use from agriculture to another use was agreed in 2013. Government's budget statement to grant permitted development rights to assist the change of use of existing agricultural buildings for other purposes. These rights are there to assist farmers to diversify into other investment streams and to assist in the easy transfer for other uses. So we, as the local authority, are required to allow the change of use to a day nursery, even though a building of this use would not be permitted in the open countryside. It has limited headroom, requires foundations, insulation, and substantial engineering changes to be able to comply to building regulations, and therefore it is proposed to remove it and start again with a new build. Is this location suitable for a day nursery? It is distant from any village and would therefore require the use of the private car. It is in the open countryside and therefore development is not encouraged. The only benefit is it has got prior permission to make use of what is claimed to be a building. I don't believe it is a permanent building. I did not support the change of use because the chicken sledge is impossible to convert to conform to building standards, and it's the wrong location for a day nursery in the open countryside. End of statement.
Thank you, Wendy. Right. Now we move to committee members. Bruce De Sarum, please.
Thank you, Chair. Having listened closely to the debate, I would like to proposing approval in line with the recommendation of the report for the following reasons. The design meets the policy objectives as we set out. It's in a good location, as it says at page 91. It would not become more prominent in the landscape. And at page 92, it is a more suitable structure. And we've heard evidence that there is a need for a day care nursery from the applicant Gemma Green. So I think based on all those thoughts that I've heard, I would be happy to propose approval, obviously subject to getting a seconder. And obviously I'd like to hear what other members also have to say.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. Would you like to speak on this, Councillor Key?
Yes, please. Yes, I mean, I'm more than happy to second it. I mean, when you actually look at the existing building that is there, I mean, if I had children, I certainly wouldn't want them to actually go to a drab building that is there. And therefore, I mean, I think a new design would be ideal. The positioning of it, I think, is absolutely superb because it's going to enhance the outlook of children in the future, because so many of these children now are confined to day nurseries and that in the towns. They don't see anything like a pond or livestock or anything like that. And I think this would be an absolute wonderful opportunity for these youngsters to be able to make use of. And therefore, I've no hesitation really in supporting the recommendation and secondly, the recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Key. Councillor Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. No, I've got nothing further to add, Chair. It's all been said and I fully support the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it seems we're exchanging one building for another, so I don't see any sort of environmental impacts that way. But just supporting the Gemma Green's comment about this would be so much better for the mental health of the children locally to have be in this sort of environment. So I very much support the application.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence. No, Councillor Pratt. Sorry, Councillor Pratt.
Thank you, Chair. The erection of a new replacement building is, in my opinion, okay. Same footprint, same dimensions, and the use of the building as a nursery has already been dealt with and granted. So no objections at all to this, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Lawrence, anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just mindful that just outside of Columpton, there is a farm with a farm shop and a cafe, restaurant, and they also have a children's nursery, and it works very, very successfully in that type of environment. And I can see on this particular one where parents working in Exeter would drop their children off in the morning, pick them up on the way home. Somebody did mention that the fact that there are no surrounding villages. Well, you don't need surrounding villages. If parents are going along a main road to go to work, they can drop their children off. It's not necessarily for the benefit of surrounding villages. So I fully approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a declaration of interest for me. I didn't link the two. I actually know Gemma Green, and I'm sorry I didn't link the two for my declarations earlier. So for those reasons, I will be abstaining from the vote.
Thank you. Right, over to our principal solicitor then. Anita Williams to sum up, please.
Thank you, Chair. So members, when your name is called, please would you indicate whether you support the motion to approve the proposal, whether you are against the motion to approve the proposal, or whether you wish to abstain from the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham.
Support the motion to approve.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Support the motion to approve.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Desarum.
Support motion to approve.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzard.
Support approval.
Councillor Key.
Approve.
Councillor Lawrence.
Support approval.
Councillor Pook.
Support approval.
Councillor Pratt.
Support approval. Thank you.
Councillor Woodward.
Support approval.
Thank you. Councillor Ragg.
Support approval.
Thank you. So the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you. Right. Sorry, I'm jumping around here. Right. We move now to agenda item 8, application 210781. It's a major full application. Sidmouth C of E Primary School, Manston Avenue, Sidmouth, and that is on pages 23 to 46. Welcome to the meeting, Councillors Bickley and Rickson. Are they here? I think Denise Bickley was here earlier.
I believe they are, yes.
Yeah, okay then. Over to Ed Freeman to present his report then, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, this application relates to Sidmouth C of E Primary School on Manston Avenue. Hopefully you can see the plan on the screen where that is. So, yes, just on the end of Manston Avenue and adjacent to the council's Manston Depot Yard, which you can see just to the east of the site. aerial photograph perhaps helps as well to make that clearer, so you can see the entrance into the site here from Manston Avenue, the existing buildings in a sort of U shape across the northern edge of the site. So the application represents a consolidation and redevelopment of primary school and nursery accommodation at the site. Essentially involves the demolition of the blocks to the west of the play area. So you can see on the plan those in lilac are sort of colour in this sort of T shape are those to be retained, the others to be demolished, for the construction of a new hall, staff room and other accommodation in their place down the side. And refurbishment of the existing buildings, including creating a new classroom, construction of a new 2-storey block to the sides of the play area, construction of a new library to the east of the play area, and a new multi-use games area and 3G pitch down the southern part of the site. There's also 8 new parking spaces proposed as well. You can see a bit clearer, well, I say a bit clearer, on this plan. You can see hopefully the multi-use games area a bit clearer here, the new blocks being built in this area and this area. I think the new library is in here. And I've got some elevations here just to show you. So I think some of the existing blocks there. And then if I scroll down, you can see the new buildings coming in these locations here. I say again, the existing buildings are those shaded in lilac, so you can see the new buildings more easily. You can see there's quite a modern contemporary design in terms of the new buildings. And there's some better images, I think, here, sort of photo montages and computer generated images to show you the new structures and the relationship with the existing buildings on the site. There's also some photographs, if I just scroll down, to show you some of the existing buildings to be retained there and the buildings to be replaced here in the flat roof structures you can see there. So in principle, the site is located within the built-up area boundary of the town, and its redevelopment for educational purposes is supported by policy. The design and form of the redevelopment is considered to be appropriate to the site and to its location. It has also been sensitively designed to prevent overlooking and minimise the impact it would have on the neighbouring properties, mindful that there are some quite close neighbouring properties to 3 sides of the site. Unfortunately, the works do necessitate the loss of some trees within the site. If I go back to the site layout plan, you can see that there is a number of trees within the central part of the site in particular that need to be taken out to accommodate this development. However, it is proposed to replace those trees with new planting to the boundaries of the site. And these works have raised no concerns from our tree officer. One of the main issues raised by the community and the ward members is that of car parking. Like all schools, the site generates a lot of demand for parking at the start and end of the school day. And there's no doubt that the proposal, which increases the numbers of staff and pupils at the site, will also increase pressure on parking in the area. This has been addressed through a transport assessment, which has been considered by the Highway Authority, and following some questions back and forth between the Highway Authority and the consultants acting for the Education Authority, and the quizzing of the methodology that's been used, the Highway Authority have raised no objections, accepting that there's generally enough on-street parking within 500 metres of the site to accommodate the additional demand. Among the conditions recommended by the Highway Authority is that at least 4 of the proposed parking spaces include electric vehicle charging points. Subject to this and a number of other conditions in the report, which includes the requirement for construction environmental management plan. So members will be aware of these being used elsewhere on major developments. We feel it's particularly important here, given the narrowness of the accesses into the site, issues of car parking and the close proximity of residents, that we have this additional level of control over how the works are carried out, where construction vehicles are parked, hours of operation, suppression of noise and dust during the construction process. So see that as key to a key condition in making this development acceptable. We think, subject to that and the other conditions detailed in the report, the recommendation is to approve. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. The ward members now. Councillor Denise Bickley, please.
Chairman, just a query. Is Councillor Skinner back in the meeting?
Oh, I don't know.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he is.
Right.
Was it, Wendy, was he in for the item?
Yes, I brought him in before the item actually started.
All right, brilliant. Okay, any issues and I'll give you a buzz back, all right?
Thank you. Bye-bye. Not talking to me, anybody, are they?
No, but you were talking to us, I think.
Yes, I was trying to. Yes, I've been in for some considerable time since the start. If that was a question, I don't know what's happened to me. The sound has gone all a bit. Can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear. Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Back to you, Chair. Back to you, Chair, if you're there.
You're on mute at the moment, Chair. Chair, can you hear us?
I'm sorry, that was an urgent phone call on my other phone. Sorry, I missed that. Can you, my apologies. Really do apologise.
It's back with you, Chair. I think, Wendy, who are we going to next?
Marianne Rickson.
Councillor Bickley was first.
Bickley, yes. Councillor Bickley?
She is in the meeting and she's unmuted. Councillor Bickley, can you hear us okay?
I can see her lips moving.
Oh.
Should we move to the next, Wendy, and go backwards? Give Councillor Bickley a chance to...
Yeah, Councillor Rickson then. She's next door.
Okay, thank you, Chair. With regard to Manstone School, sadly the Vicarage Road site is due to be closed. And obviously we can't have a town the size of Sidmouth without adequate provision for primary school children. As you have seen, it's a very constrained site, both in terms of parking provision and, if approved, it will have problems too with regard to construction. Concerns have been raised about the lack of parking and electric vehicle charging, although I think these have been addressed, because some suggestions have been made to mitigate this with a green travel plan, EV charging points and cycle racks. There is the possibility of pedestrian access to the north of the site, providing ownership can be established. Unfortunately, this area is currently overgrown, but it could be turned into a new pedestrian access to the school. Sidmouth Town Council suggested some secondary access to the depot, providing this didn't prejudice the depot operation. And it is sad that some trees will have to be lost, but obviously mitigation in terms of planting has been factored in with trees proposed for the boundary. So overall, taking into consideration the necessity for this, I support the officer's recommendation to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Rickson. Councillor Bickley, are you sorted out yet?
I've come back in. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey. Thank you for letting me speak, Councillor Ragg and Chair.
Welcome.
I have a unique perspective on this issue. I'm councillor of the adjoining ward. I'm also a resident of this ward. I'm a parent of former pupils, one's just left, and I work in the school office at Walbrook Road. So I know all the three sites very well. So hopefully I can give you a little bit of background into it all. The primary school was formed in 2011 from 3 separate schools. So it is on 3 separate sites. The key stage 2 is at Walbrook Road, and we have 2 infant sites at Vicarage Road and Manstone Avenue. Total on roll last year was 500. So it is a big school and it is growing and it's very much in demand in the area. Maintaining 3 sites brings with it financial and logistical problems. There are 3 offices, 3 dining halls, 3 lots of phones, 3 sets of cleaning staff, IT, boilers, windows, ground maintenance for 3 sites. We would love to be on 1 large site, but that's not feasible in the area, but there just isn't the land for it. So we also need to be careful with things like staffing ratios at 3 sites. You can't have a certain number of teachers across the whole site. They have to be at the right amount per site. First aiders on the sites also need to be fully trained. The senior leadership team is very thinly stretched, having to move up and down between sites often. And particularly with the Key Stage 1 children, the resources are shared across the site, so it means duplication of resources. It's also difficult for the children to get to know the other children in their year. COVID aside, it's ideal to have them all in the same place. An example of logistical problems is that the heads assembly, Claire Fegan, the head, has to travel to all 3 sites once a week just to have her assembly on the same day, which is not ideal. So we have this huge opportunity of £4.5 million, which the Department of Education is calling a proof of concept exercise, specifically looking to support schools to reconfigure their sites. We think that there's only 5 schools nationally that have qualified for this, and it is a one-off payment. It won't be reissued if we have to give it back. So we had this huge opportunity now to combine the infant site, which is the most logical step. Questions may have been raised, why not Vicarage Road? Well, firstly, we don't own that site, and it's also very run down and has a massive asbestos problem, which we are fully aware of and is managed, alone fasten anything to them. So it is time to have a change. There's also a massive parking issue there as well. As to the state of Manston now, if we went to do this, what we'd need to do would be completely change all the windows, the doors, which are in terrible state. The roof needs repairing. It needs a lot of money spent on it anyway. The grass, unfortunately, I'm an environmentalist, and yes, we want to put a multi-use games area in, but the grass field cannot be used most of the year because it's a mud bath. So really, to widen that up for the children, this is the ideal time to do it. Some objections were raised about AstroTurf. That isn't happening. It's going to be an environmental coating to the mugger. Public opposition has obviously been about parking, and we're very aware of this. It's an issue with all 3 sites now. What we're looking to do at the site, at the school, is the Devon County Council walking bus volunteer scheme. That would be the ideal solution. Between Manston Avenue and Walbrook Road, from the town in several points, ideally, to get the children up there to avoid the use of cars. And we would love to trial a parking exclusion zone, meaning children would walk a bit further, but I think we all agree that that's not a bad thing for some children, or all children, but to keep them safe. Devon County Council are currently trialling School Streets programme, and we're going to watch the results of that and get some advice from them. Like the whole town, if we could replan the town to make it more accessible, obviously we'd do that, but it's impossible at the moment. We've got 21st century traffic on pretty much 19th century town layouts. So we can't do anything about that. In one objection, it says the provision of a drop-off and pick-up area for parents should be provided. This isn't on any of the sites now, and there's simply no way to really accommodate this for a regular thing at the beginning and end of the day with hundreds of people arriving. If a child needed to be dropped off at the door, there is provision for that. It may be staggered start times for them, but we wouldn't really want lots of parents arriving at the front door anyway. The developers have contacted East Devon District Council regarding the Tully Gardens and Manston Lane areas. There's 2 paths, which, as I think Councillor Rickson just touched upon, they would be able to open these with a bit of joined up thinking and make them pedestrian area entrances. Could easily fit a buzzard gate so that during the morning and the afternoon they were open, ready to drop off and pick up, and close them during the day. This would mean that people from Cyril Mead area, Sid Ford, Ashley Crescent, Baker Close, Waitrose areas could all just walk to school so much simpler and not have to go down Manston Avenue at all. So we do need some logical joined up thinking between the school, East Devon and Devon County Councils. The team in the school are fantastic. I can really speak for the fact that I've nearly finished, worked anywhere where everyone wants to work together so well to find a solution. They've dealt with the mergers of the 3 schools and the COVID situation fantastically and have inspiring leadership. So we just want to make this work now with a minimum detrimental impact, and look forward to the future for the children of Sidmouth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bickley. Right, have a number of hands up. Councillor Disarmament.
Thank you, Chair. I think that Councillor Bickley has given a most marvellous tour de force of her reasons for why this should happen. And I think that from a policy perspective, if we look at page 41, it clearly says that the National Policy Framework makes it clear that there are three main elements to consider. And I'm not going to read the elements out because I know we've all read them, but I think this application ticks all those boxes in the three main elements. And exactly as we heard on the last application, if we were to approve this in line with recommendation, we're doing the best thing we can for our young children. And I think that is absolutely superb thing to be able to do. And I noticed that we are going to have mitigation in regard to the loss of the trees that was of great concern. And I also heard we touched upon the idea of making children walk to school further so that they'll be able to have walking and exercise in accordance with our green agenda. So I think that if we go ahead with this as per the recommendation, it is a win-win for everyone. And clearly there's lots of policy support in favour of why we should do this. So therefore, Chair, I'll be happy to propose approval of this recommendation, subject to finding a seconder. And obviously, I look forward to hearing the debate from other members. Thank you ever so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
I'll second it, Chairman.
Who was that, Councillor Key?
Yes, I'll second it.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Would you like to speak on it?
Yes, thank you. I mean, you know, looking at that, it's very, very sad to see the building, you know, sort of in the state that it is. And I think with the money that they've been allocated, I think it's an absolute wonderful opportunity to enhance the buildings there. After all, I mean, you know, our children, we have to look after and educate in the correct manner. But if you look at those buildings, it is very, very sad to see them. And I believe that Councillor Bickley said they were built in about 1911, was it, or something? And it certainly shows. But no, I mean, I'm fully supportive of it, and it does need money spent on it. And I just hope that the money they spent on it is spent wisely and correctly. So yes, I've fully support the recommendation put forward by Councillor Disarm.
Thank you, Councillor Key. Councillor Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, fully support this application. The children are the future for us all. And it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, I think, for Sidmouth to know that they've managed to obtain all this money to do this conversion. Just one question. I heard that there's going to be electric vehicle spaces, car parking spaces. Are any of the spaces going to be for disabled parking? Because obviously some parents will be disabled, and I would imagine that some of the children might be disabled, and I just wondered whether that's been taken into account with the car parking spaces, please.
Mr. Freeman, can you answer that?
Thank you, Chair. I would have to check into that. I think there are 8 additional spaces, 4 of which are EV charging spaces. So I don't think any of the new spaces are disabled spaces, but there may well be existing spaces for disabled users. I don't know without checking. I can try and look into that and come back to you.
Thank you. Councillor Pratt.
Thank you, Chair. The school is on 3 sites, and this must be a very costly exercise for them. And I welcome the proposals and fully support them.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence, anything to add?
Yes, I'm just interested in these other access points to the school. Could they be something that would be taken up as part of the planning application to make them more accessible from different areas? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I mean, based on the report and the recommendation before you, we don't, and the recommendation we've had from the Highway Authority, we don't think those are necessary to make this development acceptable. But I think we would clearly encourage the school to continue to pursue those and try and make the site as accessible as possible. But I don't think it's something that should stand in the way of this application being approved on the basis of what's before you today.
Thank you. Kim Bloxham.
Thank you, Chair. I totally support this application, and thank you to Councillor Bickley for all the history, which was most interesting. Just one thing to note, when you do build a new town, as we are in Cranbrook, sadly, the parking situation for schools is no different in a new town as it is in existing towns. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, that's all the speakers. Over to Anita Williams, solicitor, for summing up, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you have in front of you a recommendation to recommend approval of the application subject to the conditions listed in the report. When your name is called, please would you indicate whether you support the motion to recommend approval, whether you're against the motion to recommend approval, or whether you are abstaining from the vote. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham.
Support approval.
Councillor Brown.
Support approval.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Support approval.
Councillor De Saran.
Support motion to recommend approval.
Councillor Gazzard.
Support approval.
Councillor Key.
Approve.
Councillor Lawrence.
Support approval.
Councillor Pook.
Support approval.
Councillor Pratt.
Support approval. Thank you.
Councillor Skinner.
Support approval.
Councillor Woodward.
Support approval.
Councillor Ragg.
Support approval.
Thank you. So the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you. And could I thank Councillors Wrexham and Bickley for their very helpful, valuable input into this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, agenda item 10, application 202819, change of use minor. It's Beacon Farm, Beacon, Yarkham, pages 58 to 66. Thank you. We have applicant Matthew Tompkinson and committee members, Councillor Key and Councillor Brown. You're without time limit on this application. And over to Ed to present his report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, just to quickly come back to Councillor Gazzard's question on the last application, I've checked. One of the new parking spaces is to be for disabled users, so there will be provision for disabled users. I'm just moving to the right side. So on Beacon Farm, Beacon. So this application is for the change of use of an outbuilding to an independent holiday let unit. So you can see the layout of the site on the plan on the screen, and the holiday let is just highlighted, outlined in red. Was a former garage that was previously been converted. The proposal includes no physical alterations to the building. The main issue really is whether or not this is a sustainable location for the use proposed. So you can see the building there. It's already designed for ancillary residential accommodation, and the proposal is to separate it and use it for holiday let purposes. So it has this small sitting out area as well. So the issue really is obviously our policies seek to direct tourist accommodation to the main towns and villages of the district to ensure that they're located in sustainable locations that are well served by services and facilities, thereby reducing the need to travel by private car and reduce the impact of tourism on climate change. The only exceptions are, to this in our policies are conversions of existing buildings, but even then they should be reasonably accessible by foot, cycle and public transport. Officers are concerned that in this particular case, this proposal is quite remote from services and facilities and not readily accessible by the full range of sustainable means of transport. In fact, we are concerned that users are likely to be entirely reliant on the private car. While Yarcombe itself is within walking and cycling distance, its facilities are quite limited, and largely users of the site would have to walk along the country lanes, which have no footpaths, no street lighting, and so really that's limited to daytime use. Honiton is the nearest settlement of any size, and while there is a bus service from Yarcombe, it only runs for one day of the week and is a very limited service even then. The limited range of services and facilities within easy reach of the site means that those staying in the holiday lets are more likely to be entirely dependent on their cars to travel around the district, to access basic services like a supermarket or a pub. And whilst there is some economic benefit from this proposal, it has to be weighed into the balance with the environmental concerns that I've raised. We don't consider as officers that those economic benefits outweigh the environmental harm in this case, given how remote this location is from wider services and facilities and public transport. So on this basis, the recommendation is that the application be refused for the detailed wording of the reason as detailed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The applicant now, Matthew Tompkinson. Welcome to the meeting. You have 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm sorry, it's Maggie Tompkinson here.
Oh, right, okay. Carry on.
Okay, thank you so much for giving us the time to present our case this morning. We would like to ask for your support on this application. To explain why we applied for change of use, we converted the garage 2 years ago to be a home office for my husband and I. Because of an unforeseeable change in our work circumstances due to COVID-19, we no longer have need for a home office of this size, and indeed it has been sitting empty for the past 11 months. We therefore felt that offering this for holiday lets would be a perfect way to utilise the conversion and in some small way support the local community and economy. It is small with only 1 bedroom and therefore only suitable for 1 couple. And this application does not change the look of the building at all. It has a beautiful view over the Yardley Valley, area of outstanding natural beauty. And from the door, there are at least 4 footpaths easily accessible that go across the Blackdown Hills and to the village. People come from far and wide to walk our footpaths and enjoy the beauty of our countryside. There are many things to do without leaving the locality, including walking, cycling, painting, or bird watching. And we feel this offers a wonderful respite for those who needs it. Someone will always be around to answer any questions that visitors might have. There have been no objections from neighbours, and regarding the concern from one of our representatives that the property might at some point be separated from the main house, this has never been our intention. In fact, when it was converted into a home office, all the facilities within the property were purposefully put on the same system as the main house. The building has allocated parking space and its own patio, and we supply an external charging facility for anyone who has an electric car. We do have a harvest shop within half a mile, open daily, which is well stocked with everything one would need, and within a mile there is our local pub, which will be opening very shortly. We also have church, chapel and village hall, which normally holds events throughout the summer, and a weekly post office. The walk to all of these places can be done through footpaths as well as on the lanes, and though unlit in winter, most visitors would come in the summer months when walking home in the evening is both enjoyable and in daylight. Regarding use of the roads, we have noted that there are other applications in similar areas which have been approved over the past year, including Lanthorns in Sheldon and Yonder Farm in Marsh. Also, in our experience, having had dog sitters stay at our home, we have known many of them come with their supplies specifically so that they don't have to leave, but can enjoy the walks and the view rather than getting into their cars to go somewhere else. We therefore request that you approve this application. Thank you. And of course, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Bear with me a second. Right. Right, I found it again now. Technical problems. Oh, dear. Right.
The ward members next, Chair.
Yep, I found it now. Councillor Key. As long as you like, but I hope you don't.
No, I think Councillor Brown's going first.
Yeah.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yes. Makes a change. I'm just wondering what's going on with planning and why officers are being advised to change their report. I'm saying advised. I mean, they might be strongly advised. I don't know. But I was sent over a delegated report on this particular application the end of June, in which the officer who wrote the report wrote it up for approval. And then 8 weeks later, it appears on the agenda for planning written up for refusal. You know, I wonder what's going on there. I mean, you know, if you go through the report that's written for refusal, it says the proposal is contrary to policies D8 and E16. It says it's considered to be not to be a sustainable location. There's bad transport there, but in the one that I was sent through only 8 weeks ago, and I don't know what's changed in that time, the delegated report for approval was totally different. It says the conversion change of use of rural buildings to holiday accommodation is acceptable in principle according to policies D8 and E16. But in
Chair, could I just suggest perhaps Mr. Freeman comments on this now rather than read too much of an old report that may have.
Yes, I think.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's okay. Mr. Freeman, would you like to comment on what you've heard so far, please?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I don't necessarily want to get into internal processes too much. I mean, obviously the report that's before you is the final report, and the recommendation is as it is. I think it's fair to say that there has been some confusion, shall we say, among some officers in terms of obviously members having overturned a number of applications in this area, in the Yarkham area. I think particularly at the July committee, I think there was 2 applications there for holiday accommodation in this area that were overturned. And some officers felt that should change their professional view and recommendation to in line with officers' views. And my point is that no officer's opinion is what it is. It's based on the policies that the council has adopted. And that's the advice that we should be giving members. And so that is what this report reflects, is the policies that are in your local plan. And the recommendation is based on those policies. We feel this is contrary to the policies in the plan. And so I'd ask members to consider the reports that's before you rather than dwell on a draft report that may have said something different. Thank you.
Thank you. Also, I think on these delegated reports, councillors, ward members are invited to comment, and that might also, you know, alter some of the recommendations. Anyway,
right, can I come back on
yes,
that one?
Yes, I was just
Please,
going to ask you.
This report came through written up for approval together with another one which came to committee last month over at Sheldon, which you must remember, which was an identical application, but that one was written up for refusal at the same time. So 2 contrary reports came out. When I queried the one at Sheldon, I was told we will see what happens with the Sheldon one before we look at the one for Yarkham. And I've got a report saying from planning saying that they would look at that report and then adjust the other one accordingly. That one for Sheldon went through approval by this committee. For the reasons they've written up, they first wrote up approval for this application, saying it was sustainable, there was no problem with the transport, it complied with policy E16 and B8. You know, I just wonder what's going on. This application should be approved, in my opinion. You know, it is a good site. It's already there. It's built. It can be used for accommodation. You know, there's no difference between this one and the last one that was approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Key next. Councillor Key?
We can see his desk, Chair, but not, telephone by the looks of things.
Yes, it suddenly disappeared off my screen. I don't know why. I couldn't unmute. But I mean, we heard at the very beginning of this meeting, in actual fact, where we'd lost an appeal on a holiday accommodation, right? And the inspector said, the inspector considered that holiday occupiers will still be likely to drive in order to access most shops and services. So I cannot see the problem of this. All we are looking really is we're not looking to convert a building, a change of use of a building. We're looking to change the use of the building, which at the moment is for accommodation and is wanted for a holiday. So I think if this was refused and then went to appeal, we wouldn't stand one hope of actually changing it, and the inspector would come back for approval. So yes, I mean, I fully support Councillor Brown's proposal of approval. Thank you.
Right, well, we haven't gone into the debate yet, so you've both finished your speaking. We'll now move into debate, and I'll invite the ward members.
We are the ward members.
Further.
Yeah, well, I'm recommending we approve this application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seconder, please.
Yes, I'm seconding the application.
All right, thank you. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chair. This is a difficult one, and it is a difficult one because in some ways our hearts are telling us that, well, why wouldn't we do this? Our policies are telling us the reasons why we're not going to do this. I pick up on what Councillor Keyes talked on earlier regarding Home Farm Clisshoniton, and in fact, as the discussion and the debate was going forward, I actually picked up to try to read through that again, which I found quite interesting, that the appeals officer on that particular application did overturn it and allowed an application which was refused, although slightly different, but principles are the same. And I think it's where we've sat on many occasions within this committee, whereby the conflicts between where our policies are today and where they're going into the future, we seem to have this sort of void, or we might call this lag behind, about what seems to be a common sense approach to the sorts of things that are going to be happening here, particularly with this application. Of my own opinion and fruition, I've read through, and I'm just trying to read it again to make sure I'm up to speed, that there are many reasons why this application doesn't fit within our policy. But my head is telling me, for goodness sake, what is wrong with this application in going forward? What we can't do is take applicants, and I believe Maggie Tompkinson, who spoke earlier, spoke absolutely excellently. She spoke from the heart, and she spoke about how real this is. And on balance, I'm trying to say to myself that the real issue here is the sustainability issue. And I think the sustainability issue has gone past its sell-by date as far as I'm concerned. And I think that has been proved over many occasions on this committee when we've overturned applications on that basis, when it just doesn't seem that common sense is prevailing. But at the same time, we have our policies and we are where we are with those policies. I feel that the sustainability issue about the use of the car is somewhat thwarted. And Maggie Tompkinson, and I do apologise, Maggie, I don't want to call you Mrs. Tompkinson in case you're not, or you may well be, so I don't want to get myself into that place. So I'm going to call you Maggie Tompkinson. I'm sorry that I don't know you better. But in actual fact, the things that she laid out were very sustainable. And that is that you turn up to the premises, and in actual fact, the ability to have to leave the site for a 2-bedroom property is really, as far as impact is concerned, on vehicle movements, long-term vehicle movements, and also understanding that different people will come for different reasons. But I think what is on offer here is something for people to come, and I think you called it respite. And that respite in being somewhere like Yarkham, when we spend all of our time protecting the countryside, 70% of our area is AONB, for the enjoyment of people to come to and to visit and to see, and that you're offering something really quite different. You're not just disseminating it from your own home. You made it absolutely clear that actually the facilities, and I can only assume electric and these sorts of things, are the sorts of things whereby you're not trying to break it away. You're not trying to make it into a different premises, and it is to a tied purpose. So it's a really fine, balanced one for me regarding our policies and how strong the policies are in saying that this is not acceptable. And yet at the same time, something says to me, how do we devolve our policies to such a point that we make all policies work for all things? And then I come back to the place where I sit today, and I think all of us as members are. And that is that we sit here to discuss, to listen to the views been put forward by both the ward members and by the applicant in the way in which it's going through the process of why this could be supported and why the application has actually come to us in the first place. And also the arguments put forward by our officers. I don't want to get into the debate about draft applications and applications that then become the main document. I don't want to get into that space, but we are where we are with this application and where it is. And on balance, I feel that the benefit for what we're trying to do in our driving agenda and going forward is increasing the ability to have staycation, whether it be Airbnb, bed and breakfast, hotels, whatever those places are, and the opportunities come up that don't fit quite within the box. And this is one of those opportunities. And yet the wonderful experience that it will give to some people, particularly with respite, that do actually want to go walking, that do want to do bird watching, that do need that time and space, not on a holiday camp, not necessarily with a caravan, not necessarily in a hotel, something quite unique and quite different. And I look at this as diversification. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity that we shouldn't miss. And I've come to think that over time. I thought it when I read the report previous. I'm listening to the debate going forward, and I welcome the debate from others. But I'm actually of a frame mind set that I'm going to be supporting the ward members and supporting the applicant for all of the right reasons. And I know what's going to come forward to both the applicants. They're going to say to you, Anita is going to say to you, please give me the reasons why you're going to overturn our policies. So I'm going to suggest while people are talking that the two of you and perhaps other members, if they feel the same way, then supporting this application, we come up for the reasons of doing the right thing again. And we've turned over several applications that I believe for the right things. And when you look at Home Farm in Clisholmton, very close to the knuckle of where we are with this here, overturned by a planning inspectorate. All of those things are telling me that actually our policy that's in place today is old news. And the way that we've got to drive the agenda and diversification and looking into the future is the new news. And I believe this is part of the new news, which we should be supporting.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. You've made your point, and we know that COVID has impacted on all our lives and has changed the way that we work. and the way that we spend our leisure time as well. So I'm sure that will be taken into account with the drawing up of the new local plan. Councillor Key, anything new to add?
Yeah, yes, I would just like to actually ask that the one that I was referring to was in actual fact the one that was in our report, which was April Rise at Axminster, not Home Farm. That's the thing. But I mean, the thing is, as if this was a normal property, which it was there, an ancillary thing, you could have people there 365 days of the year, leaving there with one, maybe two cars. So the holiday accommodation will be restricted to a certain time and won't have the transportation going for it in the same way. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you would like some policies, Chair, I can give you some policies, but it should be approved.
Can we do that at the end, please?
Yes, please.
Councillor Desarum.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Having listened very closely to the debate, it is quite clear that the applicant has moved from the Home Office situation, which they found themselves into, to a holiday let because they want to support the local economy. And I understand, as Councillor Skinner said, that it's not fully policy compliant, as we're all aware of. But I think on page 63 of the report, it did show very positive reasons why we should do it. One of which is that the applicant indicates that an electric vehicle charging point would also be available. The proposal would not therefore increase the quantum of development within rural area. The visible impact additional parking would be limited. So I think that yes, there are policy issues here, but I think that I would go along with the ward members, Councillors Key and Councillor Brown, in support of this application, because it is going to provide much needed respite and mental health and well-being for our visitors and our potential residents, as it says in our council plan. Thank you very much indeed, Chair.
Thank you. Right, there are no more hands raised. So back to you, Councillor Brown.
Right. Yeah, I mean, as it says in the report on page 65, under conclusions, it says it has some support under policy 16 and D8. So they're the two policies we want it approved on.
Chair, can we just check with Ed Freeman that he's content with that? Is that sufficient, Ed?
Yeah.
Well, just to clarify, in terms of the conclusion, yes, it does say at the start of the conclusion that the application finds some support under policies E16 and D8, but then it does go on to say at the end, the last sentence, despite some limited benefits from the proposal, its location and reliance upon the use of the car weigh heavily against the proposal, resulting in a development that is contrary to policy D8 and E16 of the local plan. So I struggle with a reason for approval, which is that it complies with those policies. It may be that members feel that the economic benefits of this development outweigh the environmental harm that the report identifies and the policy conflicts that the report identifies, which is obviously for members to make that judgment. But I'm a bit concerned on these holiday lets from this application and a couple of previous meetings that we're in danger of making policy on the hoof, really, and that's really something that needs to be done through the local plan process. So I really think we need to be careful, and I would advise members to focus on specific issues with this application that mean they may wish to approve it. And the main reason I would suggest from the discussion would be potentially the economic benefits that have been identified of this holiday let, rather than trying to say that it complies with policies when me and my team are clearly of the view that it doesn't comply with policy as things stand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. And I think that's note of caution. If you're minded to approve this today, members, then that will weaken our position for the future. And with the impact on the economy, we're talking about a couple staying. That's all, a couple, two people. Is it really going to impact on the economy? So over to you, Anita Williams, for your summing up, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check with the proposer and the seconder that whether they're content with Mr. Freeman's suggestion that the economic benefit outweighs the environmental harm, or what would they like recorded as the reason to make this decision? Can I just check that?
I'm happy with that. I don't know what Councillor Brown's got to say.
Hello?
Oh, is he frozen? Are you there,
Councillor
Councillor
Brown,
Brown?
yes, he's frozen. Perhaps
we're gonna-
switch
we're
off
gonna-
his video.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to wait to hear from him. Sorry, Chair. We just need to be, because it's an overturning of the decision, we just need, or recommendation, we just need to be clear.
Yes.
Wait for him to come back in, I think, if we may.
Is Councillor Brown muted?
No, I'm back. I went down.
He's back again.
Yeah, I'm back again.
Okay. Councillor Brown, I don't know if you heard.
Not a word, thank you.
Okay. So did you hear Mr. Freeman's response regarding the policies and his suggestion that he thinks they don't, that this application doesn't meet the policies, but he was suggesting that a reason potentially for going against the officer's view might be that the economic benefit of the application outweighs the environmental harm. Councillor Key was content to go with that. Obviously we need to be clear what your reasoning is.
Yeah, is that the same as the one last meeting for Sheldon? Is that the same reason we approved that one?
I couldn't.
Or was there anything else added to it?
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, Councillor, and I doubt Ed can either. He wasn't in that meeting.
Right.
So you just, as ever, if it's overturning a recommendation by officers, you just need to be clear on your reasons.
Yeah, but I'll accept those reasons then, yes.
Okay. Mr. Freeman, you content with that?
Well, I'm clear of members' views.
As a reason, your content is sufficient.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you. So members, the recommendation is to, against the officer's recommendation, is to recommend approval of the application, presumably again with conditions to be delegated to the officers in consultation with the chair and ward members. Proposer and seconder, are you content with that?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. So members, when your name is called, please indicate whether you are recommending approval, whether you are against the motion to recommend approval, or whether you are abstaining from the vote.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham.
Support approval.
Councillor Brown.
Approval.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Support approval.
Councillor De Sarum.
Support recommendation of approval.
Councillor Gazzard.
Reluctantly against.
Councillor Key.
Approval.
Councillor Lawrence.
Support approval.
Councillor Pook.
Support approval.
Councillor Pratt.
Support approval. Thank you.
Councillor Skinner.
Support approval.
Councillor Skinner. Sorry, I didn't catch that.
Support approval.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Support approval.
Councillor Ragg.
Support the recommendation to refuse.
So you're against?
Yes.
So, yeah, okay. So we have just 2 against and the rest in support. So I could confirm the application is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Wendy. Right, agenda item 12, Application 2013-13, it's an outline minor application for 3 Orchard Close, Ottery St Mary, pages 74 to 83. And welcome to the meeting to Laura Clare. Is she here? She's objecting. And board members Peter Faithful and Vicky Johns, and committee ward member already here, Councillor Pratt. Over to you, Mr. Freeman, to present your report, please.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, this application relates to 3 Orchard Close, Ottery St Mary, and it's seeking outline planning permission for the erection of a chalet bungalow. Members should be aware that all matters are reserved, so this means that if permission were to be approved, it's essentially agreeing the principle, and matters of details of the design and access, landscaping, etc. would all be subject to a subsequent application. The site lies at the end of Orchard Close and forms part of the substantial garden of number 3. As you can see on the plans, this is the existing Orchard Close. Number 3 has a very substantial garden extending into this area. The proposal is to build a chalet bungalow within the area outlined in red and labelled Area B. And these illustrative plans show you the potential arrangement. Let's say they are illustrative only. The site is within the built-up area boundary of the town, and so the principle of development is acceptable. Indeed, outline planning permission was previously granted for the site in 2006, but that has now lapsed, and that was strictly for a single-storey bungalow, whereas this application is for a chalet bungalow. The site is well screened, as you can see in the photographs. And development would take a similar form to that of 4A, which was built in the garden of number 4. If I go back to the site plan, you can see number 4 here has had a property built in its substantial garden as well, now known as 4A. And so the proposal would almost mirror that arrangement. The main concern raised by the ward member and some residents is that of overlooking arising from dormers and other windows within the roof space. Noting that, as I say, the 2006 consent was for a single-storey dwelling only. Despite this, the site provides a good-sized plot, and it is considered that through careful design could accommodate some first-floor accommodation without impacting detrimentally on the amenity of neighbouring properties. Albeit due to the elevated position of the site, particular care would need to be taken with regard to overlooking to the properties to the north. I think you can see in some of the photographs the difference in levels between the sites and those to the north, where I think the site is in the region of about a storey higher. So there is a need for care in terms of the relationship both with those properties and looking back at the existing properties where the access would come in. But I think through careful siting of any dormer windows, potentially the use of high level Velux windows and roof lights to this elevation to the north, could prevent overlooking and still enable some first floor accommodation to be provided within the property, should members be minded to approve the application. Officers believe that a chalet bungalow can be accommodated on this site, and these are matters of detail that can be addressed at a later stage through reserved matters applications. It's worth saying also that there is a habitats regulations assessment accompanying this application as well. And the proposal is to mitigate the impacts through a contribution in the usual way, but it does mean that there is a secondary recommendation in front of you to adopt the appropriate assessment that's been carried out and included in the report. But I would recommend both the appropriate assessment and the planning application before you for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now we have the objector, Laura Clare. Is she here?
Yes, she is, Chair.
Yeah.
She's currently on mute at the moment.
Okay. Could you unmute yourself, please?
Hello, I'm so sorry.
Hello.
Okay,
Welcome to the meeting. You have 10 minutes to speak.
Thank you. I'm Laura Clare. My husband Freddie and I own 4 Orchard Close next door, and I'm also speaking for 2 other adjoining families who submitted opposing comments, Mr. and Mrs. Heath at the Orchard in Yonder Close, and Mr. and Mrs. Farringdon at 4 Orchard Close, currently who recently sold the house to us and are renting there while they look to buy locally. We would have liked to be involved the owners of 4A Orchard Close as immediate neighbours as well. Mr. David Barber, formerly of 4A, submitted comments at consultation stage, but he's no longer resident nor owner there. The new owners of 4A move in today, 1st of September. So we are a bit concerned that they haven't been able to be involved at this key stage of consultation. So as neighbours, we also feel that some of our key submitted concerns are haven't been able to be mitigated. I'm so sorry, just 1 minute. Despite the considered suggestions the planning team made in their report. So we would like to ask the committee to consider not approving this application in principle until these questions can be clearly answered. So our first question is why a chalet style bungalow would be acceptable on this site in 2021. The Ottery Neighbourhood Plan, in place since 2018 at NP3A1, requires developments to reflect the character of the surrounding area and protect the amenity of neighbours, and we consider this proposal to build 3A fails both of those tests. There are no chalet style bungalows in Orchard Close. We have strong concerns about overlooking and additional car and people noise if 3A is built. Dwellings here are sited very close together, particularly on the Long Dogs Lane side of the 3A site. The 3A Orchard Close Garden site actually abuts under 6 much smaller dwellings on Long Dogs Lane. And problematic overlooking in general from a future 3A chalet bungalow is acknowledged in the planning team's report, affecting 3 and 4 Orchard Close, especially the orchard on Yonder Close and 4A Orchard Close, lower down the slopes from the 3A Orchard site. So we feel that a chalet style bungalow on higher ground than its neighbours in a street without any chalet style bungalows would dominate by bulk and height and overlooking, and that this overbearing appearance we feel could remain even with the mitigations around upper windows that were recommended in the planning report that have just been mentioned, because of the sloping site position creating this dominating and overlooking effect. So together then we would respectfully disagree with the planning report recommendations that this there'd be an acceptable level of relief between the building and the garden spaces, and there wouldn't be an unduly harmful overbearing effect. Our second question is around the weight seemingly given to this lapsed planning approval from 15 years ago in 2006.
30 seconds left.
This was for a smaller footprint, a different access route and a single-storey bungalow. Our third question is around the access route proposed for 3A, which would create 3 parallel roadways visually obliterating the current terminus point of our cul-de-sac, creating an unacceptable through road effect between 3 and 4 Orchard Close. We would suggest a resiting of the access road around to the alternative access roadway existing already at the 3 Orchard Close site. And we do have traffic and safety concerns because effectively 5 driveways would emerge at the same point of convergence on Orchard Close, removing all the amenity for our children playing outside, but also creating road safety concerns. I've a lot more I could say, but not in this time. So I'm happy to pause there for any questions.
Thank you. Could I go back to Mr. Freeman, please, and ask, would there be overlooking? Because from what I've read, there wouldn't be dormer windows. Would it be roof lights?
Thank you, Chair. Well, as I say, it's an outline application at this stage, so we don't have any details of the design of the property itself. What we're being asked to consider is the principle of a chalet bungalow. So we need to be satisfied that a bungalow with some first floor accommodation within the roof space could be accommodated in an acceptable way. And what we're saying as officers that we think that potentially can be accommodated, but obviously we need to be careful in terms of which elevations have any dormer windows on and which potentially are restricted in terms of high level roof lights. But we wouldn't know any of those details or be able to have that discussion with the applicant until we come to any reserved matters application that might follow if members are accepting of the principle today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Well, you've heard Mr. Freeman say that this application will come back for reserved matters, and it's then the detail will be looked at. And it's the principle, as Mr. Freeman said, the principle of development on this site, and in the officer's view, there is a space there. The one concern seems to be the overlooking. Right, then we go to the ward members, please. Councillor Peter Faithful, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to first declare personal interest in that as district councillors, we own property abutting this site on the north side. However, I think it's difficult to object on this as an outline planning permission, but I very much support the comments that are made regarding privacy, in particular the privacy to the residents on the north side, which doesn't seem to have been mentioned much. Yonder close, they'll be potentially looking straight down into the accommodation. I'm not sure how much of a screen the garages form along the north side, and I would want to see that shown in any reserve matters before anything will be allowed. But it's the other thing that concerns me is potential surface water runoff. We get so much hard surface added on, generous driveways and things, and this will be running down again into yonder close potentially. But I say the main issue around is how the privacy can be addressed. So in principle, I'm in support, but I would definitely want to see the privacy issues properly addressed. And if it means going back to a basic single story bungalow, then maybe they need to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Faithful. Vicky Johns, is there a statement for you to read out there, Wendy?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
So Councillor Johns has a few concerns with regards to this application that have been raised in the neighbours' comments, mainly due to the fact that this application is for a chalet bungalow. I believe the original application was for a single-storey bungalow. There is also concern for the amount of trees being removed for the height of the new chalet-style bungalow, and with the windows being able to overlook neighbouring properties due to the fact that the ground is higher than the neighbouring properties. Any windows facing north will be directly looking into 2 bedrooms, a bathroom and a private back garden. This, in my view, with the information I have in front of me, I reserve the right to change my opinion if other information comes to light. Although I appreciate that the neighbours don't have the right to a view, etc., they do have the right to some privacy in their own homes and back garden. This planning application would be detrimental to the residents living closest to this application. I hope their concerns are considered in this application. End of statement.
Thank you, Wendy. Right, Councillor Jeff Pratt, the other ward member. You have 5 minutes. No, you don't. You've got as long as you like, but don't take it.
Right. Thank you, Chair. Bear with me, please. Right, it is as we've heard, an outline planning application. The first point I'd just like to make is that the permission given in regard to the new bungalow was in 2006. And of course, in this case, we're dealing with a chalet bungalow, and the windows or roof lights, which will serve the living space at the first floor level, the first floor level living space has prompted the objections. And since 2006, of course, Ottery, St Mary and West Hill have obtained a neighbourhood plan, and the neighbourhood plan policy NP3 is very relevant to this application. It states that any proposal should protect the amenity of neighbours and will be resisted if such proposals adversely affect neighbouring properties by overlooking and or they would require removal of trees that made a significant contribution to the character or ecological value of the area. Now, the tree officer has confirmed that there are mature trees prominent in the site, which are desirable to be maintained. Of course, we have got a plan. The location plan is shown on the screen at the moment, and you can see the number of trees there. And I think there's a visual photograph, an aerial photograph, which shows the extent of the trees in that site. That's shown now. Thank you. So there are considerable considerations to be given to this application as it stands. And we have a neighbourhood plan, and the conditions and the policy NP3 is very much relevant to this application as it stands, although it is, of course, an outline. My view is that my view is that the application should be refused at this stage. And perhaps I should make that comment now and see what happens with the rest of the committee, whether they would support that.
Thank you. I must add a note of caution here. The site is considered large enough for a dwelling. And if we were to refuse this now and it went to appeal, I don't think we'd be in a strong position at all. I don't know what, Mr. Freeman, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you, Chair. Well, yes, I mean, I would agree. I think, we're recommending approval because we think this is acceptable. And so I think an appeal could be difficult. As I say, I think the real issue is whether or not members are content that a chalet bungalow can be accommodated in terms of the first floor accommodation without excessively overlooking the neighbours. And I appreciate that's difficult without more details in front of us. But I think there is sufficient distance to all of the boundaries to give options in terms of how light and is provided to that upper floor space, whether that be roof lights or dormers. We will need to explore through the detailed design process, but from an officer's perspective, we're satisfied that it can be acceptably accommodated.
Yeah, and that will come when the reserved matters application goes in. Councillor Steve Gazzard.
Thank you, Chair. Could I just ask for clarity from Mr. Freeman, please? As Councillor Pratt has raised the issue that I'm concerned about, and the objector did, is that unfortunately I don't have Ottery St Mary's neighbourhood plan in front of me, but is it right that in there it does state about developments there that they shouldn't be of chalet type applications? Because I mean, if that's the case, I think that's one of the grounds that if it's going to be refused, it could be refused. But could I just ask for clarity from Mr. Freeman on that, please?
Through you, Chair, I don't have the neighbourhood plan in front of me either. I can check while members are discussing exactly what it says. But my understanding, and Councillor Pratt might want to correct me if I've got this wrong, my understanding was I don't think it was being suggested that the policy ruled out chalet bungalows, simply that the policy sought to protect the amenity of neighbouring properties from overlooking, as indeed do our own policies. Yeah. So I don't think we would, as officers, be recommending this to you if we felt that it would have that impact. Clearly, we should be preventing overlooking of neighbouring properties, but I don't believe there's anything that rules out, sorry, chalet bungalows in this location policy wise.
Thank you.
If I could come in, please. I've got the neighbourhood plan in front of me, and NP3 does not mention chalet bungalows. So that point, what Ed Freeman has said is correct. But of course, the MP policy does refer to overlooking.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Desarum.
Thank you, Chair. And of course, thank you for your earlier most helpful comments on this subject. And I think that if we are to approve it today in line with the recommendation, if we look at page 79, it's been clearly stated that policies in the main neighbourhood plan seek to ensure that backline development is brought forward in an appropriate way. And I think that the key to all this will be, how is it brought forward in an appropriate way if we were to say, yes, it must be done in accordance with what's been recommended. And as Mr. Freeman has already outlined, it's a good size plot. If you look at the design on the page of the map, etc., you can see that it's similar to plot 4A, but obviously it's not quite the same. And I think that Councillor Pratt did very sensibly raise the issue of trees. And I think that sort of issue will have to be dealt with at the next stage of the process. So I am concerned about the trees. I quite get what Councillor Pratt has said. It is a concern, but I think that, as you rightly said, all that will be dealt with at the next stage. So my mind is to give the outline with leaving everything as it says to the reserve matters, when we'll hopefully come back to this meeting and we'll have an even more in-depth detail about this. So I don't think we'd be breaching the Ottery neighbourhood plan if we were to give the approval as is outlined. We will then obviously work on it later. So those are my humble thoughts on it, Chair, and I thank you so much for your indulgence.
Thank you very much, Councillor Desarum. Helpful as ever. Councillor Key.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, the thing is, I mean, we've got to look at this as an outline planning application. Once the full application comes in, then that is when we can actually make an awful lot of decisions as to whether we like it or whether we don't. Now, a chalet bungalow, I mean, I know of 2 chalet bungalows that do not have dormers, only have roof lights, because if it's a bedroom, you don't necessarily need a dormer. You're not going to be having an armchair sat up there looking out the window. So roof lights are quite adequate. And I know, as they say, of 2 chalet bungalows that have roof lights for the bedrooms above. So I think that is something that we can actually stipulate when it comes forward for the full planning. Also, there is the possibility, of course, I don't know, did we see a site picture of the application? Because I wondered, you see, whether to stop this overlooking, the actual dwelling could be lowered into the ground a little bit to compensate for the overlooking. I don't know. Mr. Freeman might be able to help me on that.
Mr. Freeman, do you want to comment? I think, you know, from what I understand, excavation is rather expensive.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, this photograph on the screen now is looking from the site back towards the existing properties 3 and 4, Orchard Close. So you can see, I think the land does drop away slightly, is my reading of that. But yes, I mean, there's various things you can do. Yes, you could look at levels. I suspect more likely is looking at roof lights within the roof space. As long as I don't think there's anything that says you have to have a dormer for it to be a chalet bungalow. But obviously, I'm sure that would be preferred by most people. But yes, it could just be served by roof lights, as long as there's a means of escape to comply with building regulations from the first floor. But there's usually an engineering solution to that, even without a dormer. So there are plenty of options to explore in terms of the design, I think, that could make this acceptable.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you. Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think we've got to approve this. If you look at 4 and 4A, I think they sort of set a precedent of building in the garden. And I think we'd have a difficult job not approving it. But as other people have said, you know, we've got to take into account the view from the windows and what can be overlooked. But I think looking at the plan as it is, a lot of the view is going to be obscured by trees anyway. So, you know, I don't see it as a problem. I think we should approve it. Thank you.
Are you making that a proposal?
I don't have any real reason for approval other than the fact that I think it should be taken on board that it's got to be looked at when the actual planning application comes in. But if that's okay to go as a proposal, I'm quite happy to propose it.
Right, we've had a proposal. Is there a seconder, please?
Yes, I will. I'm going to speak.
Councillor Skinner.
Yep, and listen, you know, there's lots of things about whether it's overlooking and not overlooking. This is an outline application. Those things will come to the fore with our officers when it comes forward. I don't think there's much more to be said about this application. I'm going to be very much supporting what's going forward and supporting the officers' recommendations. So, yeah, that's just, yeah.
Right.
Fine.
It's
Thank
been
you.
proposed. Thank you, Councillor Skinner. It's been proposed. It's been seconded. There are no more hands up. So over to Anita to sum up, please.
Thank you, Chair. So we actually have two recommendations here, which we'll just take separately, as Mr. Freeman set out in the beginning. So the recommendations are as per page 81 of your papers. Recommendation 1, to adopt the appropriate assessment, and recommendation 2, to approve subject to the following conditions. So if we can, Wendy, if we can do them one at a time, and then we'll come back to the second one. So the first recommendation is to adopt the appropriate assessment. So members, when your name is called, please would you indicate whether you support the motion to be recommended, to recommend approval, whether you're against the motion to recommend approval, or whether you are abstaining from the vote. And that's for the first issue, which is adopt the appropriate assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just let Councillor Pratt in a moment. Right, okay, so I'll start with Councillor Bloxham.
Support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
I can't really vote on this because my internet went down for a large majority of the debate on this one. So it'd be best if I was to abstain.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Support.
Thank you. Councillor De Sarum.
Motion to recommend approval as per item 1.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzard.
Support.
Councillor Key.
Support approval.
Councillor Lawrence.
Support approval.
Councillor Pook.
Support approval.
Councillor Pratt.
Sorry, I've just joined the meeting again, Wendy.
Shall I put you as abstaining?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Councillor Skinner.
Support.
Councillor Woodward.
Support.
Councillor Ragg.
Support approval.
Thank you. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 in support, 2 abstentions. So the appropriate assessment is recommended for adoption. So that's the first one.
Thank you, Wendy. So the second recommendation is to approve subject to the following conditions, which are set out from page 81 onwards. So members, when your name is called, please would you indicate whether you support the motion to recommend approval, whether you are against the motion to recommend approval, or whether you are abstaining from the vote. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham.
Support approval.
Thank you. Councillor Brown, are you abstaining again?
I have to, yes, because I missed most of the debate.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Support.
Councillor De Sarum.
Support motion to recommend approval.
Councillor Gazzard.
Support.
Councillor Key.
Support approval.
Councillor Lawrence,
Support approval.
Councillor Pook,
Support.
Councillor Pratt, I take it you're abstaining again?
I'm abstaining again because the screen went dead on me. Sorry.
Lovely. Okay, thank you. Councillor Skinner,
Support.
Councillor Woodward,
Support.
Councillor Ragg.
Support approval.
Thank you. So the application is recommended for approval as well.
Thank you, Wendy. Right. That's right. Just waiting for my screen to come back. It's okay, I'm back now. Then we move to right, here we are. Agenda item 9, application 21-1584, full application, minor, Odell Cottage, Appottery, pages 47 to 57. We have no speakers apart from the ward members. So over to you, Ed Freeman, to present your report, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this application seeks consent for 3 huts to be used for meditation spaces in association with the existing Buddhist monastery, which is on the adjoining land. In fact, these 3 huts sit quite close to 4 existing similar units on the land as well. So you can see the wider monastery site or the wider land holding in blue, and you can see the 3 huts separated in red there. And basically these are just little huts that provide a small meditation space with their own porch, and we understand the space is for the monks to basically spend quite a lot of their time, I believe, in meditation, and then they take meals and use bathing facilities within the main monastery building. So they're not independent living accommodation, but spaces where they spend much of their time during the day, I believe. While there are no specific policies in the local plan that are relevant to development like this, we believe the development is well screened and would have no real significant landscape impact. Obviously, the requirements being in an AONB is to conserve or enhance the landscape, and it's considered that this development could not really be located anywhere else due to the specific needs of the monastery and its current siting in this location, and obviously the need for this facility to be in a quiet country location, given its purpose for meditation. As I say, I think in terms of the landscape impact, it would conserve the landscape, but the monastery also provides a number of community activities which add to the social dimension of sustainability as well as the environmental. And as a result, we accept that this development is sustainable. We've received no objections to the application. It's before members because of the uncertain policy position, shall we say. But the recommendation is to approve as detailed in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ed. I wouldn't mind one of them in my back garden. Right. Ward members then.
Right, shall I go first?
Yes, go on.
Yeah, no, I recommend this for approval. I mean, it is an isolated area that it's in, but I mean, it's ideal for the monks, and you know, therefore I recommend it for approval.
Thank you. You've made that proposal. Is there a seconder?
Yes, I'll second it as the second ward member.
Thank you, Councillor Key. Anything to add?
No, nothing to add in actual fact. The only thing I will add is in actual fact that it is in Luppet and not in Appottery in actual fact.
All right.
But
okay.
that doesn't matter. But yes, I mean, all that's going to happen in there, they will either just have possibly just a mat to sit on for meditation purposes.
Yeah.
That's all.
Okay, that's fine. I think it's pretty well cut and dried. Anything to add, Councillor Skinner?
I think, Madam Chairman, Chair, sorry. Chair. I keep calling
Old habits die hard.
I think I'm sorry, I'm a bit old school, but I try to, if I can correct myself, I do. I think this is wonderful. I've tried Buddhism myself for many years, and trying to get into a place of meditation is really difficult thing to do. And having somewhere where it's peace and quiet and being able to do this.
Have you got the saffron robes?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. But I studied it for many years.
I got the saffron.
Well, yeah, but I'm just going to say that this is wonderful. And if there's here again, we sit into place, don't we? Whereby why does it come with Mr. Freeman? Why does it come to us? Because it doesn't sort of really fit within a policy. It fits sort of maybe just outside. So we thought we'd better bring it. And I've sort of lays a little bit to the one with the other one. But having said that, take all that to one side. Having said that, wonderful location, wonderful, peaceful place, and nothing but a credit to doing it. And I'm in full support of this sort of thing that actually fits outside of our box, our policy box, because this works. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Skinner. Councillor Woodward, anything to add?
Well, thank you, Chair. Just as one of the, just to mention that one of the great joys of being on this planning committee is that you find out about things you didn't know before. So I had no idea this was here, but I see it's a great joy to know that it is there. Just to make sure that it is in line with our mental health aspirations for East Devon. So I think it's a great example of what can be shown for our local residents to know that it's there and to enjoy. So I'm very much
valid point. As a mental health champion.
Thank you.
Councillor Key, anything?
Yes, just one sort of minor point. In actual fact, the actual monastery has been there for about 54 years.
Right, thank you. Right, you're not thinking of joining in then? No. Okay, over to you, Anita.
I don't think they'd have me.
No comment.
You wouldn't fit into one of their orange robes, David.
No comment.
We've missed you too much, David.
Okie dokie. I'll crack on, Chair. So the recommendation is to approve subject to the conditions that are listed in the report. So members, when your name is called, please would you indicate whether you support the motion to recommend approval, whether you are against the motion to recommend approval, or whether you are abstaining from the vote. Thanks.
Councillor Bloxham.
Yes, support approval.
Councillor Brown.
Support approval.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Support approval.
Councillor De Saram.
Support motion to recommend approval.
Councillor Gazzard.
Support.
Councillor Key.
Approve.
Councillor Lawrence.
Support the motion.
Councillor Pook.
Support approval.
Councillor Pratt.
Support approval.
Councillor Skinner.
Support approval.
Councillor Woodward.
Support approval.
Councillor Ragg.
Support approval.
Thank you. That application is recommended for approval.
Right. Thank you. And now we move. I had thought of having a comfort break, but this is so straightforward. The next application, item 14, last application, 21 13 16. It's a listed building consent, minor, Greenways, Hillhead, Colleton, and it's pages 94 to 99, and it's before us because it's a member of staff is concerned with this one. Okay, over to you, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is for listed building consent for a replacement single-storey extension and replacement of 2 first-floor windows. The existing kitchen extension is a relatively recent addition in that it's less than 70 years old, but it's quite damp, it's uninsulated and has little natural light to it, while someone's attempted to build it with a shallow roof pitch, but the pitch is too shallow for the slates that they have on the roof, which is causing a number of problems as well. It's probably best if I skip to the photographs and you can see the existing kitchen extension. And basically the proposal is to replace that and address the issues I've highlighted by having a modern flat roof design with roof lights set within it to provide natural light, and it would be rendered to match the main house. The other element of the application is a replacement of these 2 first floor windows. These are quite old Crittall windows, which are allowing in damp and water. And the proposed replacement windows would be modern timber windows, which you can see details on the elevations, and this is the extension, as I say. Fundamentally, we consider this as an improvement in that it's enhancing the listed building and protecting the historic elements of it by preventing water ingress and damp. So the recommendation is to approve as per the condition, subject to the conditions in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ed. Just a query there. Is it usual to have Crittall windows in a listed building? Presumably, would they have been put in before the building was listed?
I would imagine so. They're probably not original.
No.
So yes, I mean, I think it's further illustrates the enhancement in that we're putting back traditional timber windows,
yes. Yeah.
And removing something more modern.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Skinner.
I'm just going to move the recommendation, Chair. I don't think there's much for discussion, I wouldn't have thought, and move the recommendation to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Who's
I'll
that?
second it. Yes.
Councillor Key.
No, nothing to add, Chair,
No,
because
okay.
I mean, if it hadn't have been an
Straightforward.
officer, it would have probably gone for delegation.
Yes, indeed it would have. Okay, can we go to you, Nita, please?
Yeah, certainly, Chair. Thank you. So the recommendation before you is to approve subject to the conditions set out in the report. Members, when your name is called, please would you indicate whether you support the motion to recommend approval, whether you are against the motion to recommend approval, or whether you are abstaining from the vote. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you. Councillor Bloxham.
Support approval.
Councillor Brown.
Yes, support approval.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Support approval.
Councillor Desarum.
Support motion to recommend approval.
Councillor Gazzard.
Support approval.
Councillor Key.
Approve.
Councillor Lawrence.
Approve.
Councillor Pook.
Support approval.
Councillor Pratt.
Support approval. Thank you.
Councillor Skinner.
Support approval.
Councillor Woodward.
Support approval.
Councillor Ragg.
Support approval.
Thank you. So that application is recommended for approval.
Thank you, Wendy. That brings our meeting to an end. I'd like to thank everyone, including members of the public,